The sound of laughter filled the living room as Victoria walked down the stairs, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. She had been trying to sleep upstairs, but the noise from Nathan's impromptu party had made it impossible. The clock on the wall read 2:47 a.m., and she could hear voices she didn't recognize mixed with Nathan's loud, drunken laugh. She paused at the bottom of the stairs, taking in the scene. Beer bottles covered her coffee table, cigarette ash had been carelessly flicked onto her cream-colored carpet, and the smell of alcohol hung heavy in the air. Nathan sat on the couch with his arm wrapped around a blonde woman Victoria had never seen before, a woman who was wearing Victoria's favorite silk blouse that had gone missing weeks ago. "Nathan," Victoria said quietly, trying to keep her voice steady. "It's almost 3 in the morning. Could you please keep it down? I have work tomorrow." The room fell silent. Nathan looked up at her with glassy eyes, his face twisting into a sneer. "Look who decided to join us," he said, his words slurred. "My lovely wife, always trying to ruin everyone's fun." The blonde woman Sophia, Victoria would later learn, giggled and pressed closer to Nathan. "She's exactly like you described," Sophia said, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "Poor thing, always so serious." Victoria felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. She could see the other men in the room, Nathan's friends from work, watching her with amusement. They had been coming around more often lately, and Victoria had noticed how they looked at her, like she was some kind of joke they were all in on. "I'm not trying to ruin anything," Victoria said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just need to sleep. I have that presentation tomorrow morning, remember? The one I've been working on for weeks." Nathan's expression darkened. "All right. Your precious job. The one that's so much more important than your husband's happiness." He stood up unsteadily, pushing Sophia aside. "You know what your problem is, Victoria? You think you're better than everyone else." "That's not true," Victoria protested, but her voice cracked. She could feel tears threatening to spill over, but she refused to give Nathan and his friends the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "It is true," Nathan continued, moving closer to her. "You walk around this house like you own it. Like you're doing me some kind of favor by being here. Well, let me tell you something, sweetheart. You're nothing special. You're just a pathetic, boring woman who can't even keep her own husband happy." The words hit Victoria like physical blows. She had heard Nathan say cruel things before, but never in front of other people. Never with such venom. The men on the couch were laughing now, and Sophia was filming everything with her phone. "Nathan, please," Victoria whispered, reaching out to touch his arm. "Let's just go upstairs and talk about this privately." But Nathan jerked away from her touch as if she had burned him. "Don't touch me," he snarled. "You disgust me. Do you know that? You disgust me." Victoria stood frozen, unable to process what was happening. This was her husband, the man she had loved for 8 years, the man she had built a life with. The man who used to bring her flowers and tell her she was beautiful. "Nathan," she tried one more time, her voice breaking. "Please, I love you. I don't understand what's happening." That's when Nathan's face twisted with rage. "You love me?" he shouted. "You love me? That's the biggest joke I've ever heard. You don't love me, Victoria. You love controlling me. You love making me feel small and worthless." Before Victoria could respond, Nathan raised his hand and slapped her hard across the face. The sound echoed through the room, and Victoria stumbled backward, her hand flying to her cheek. She stared at Nathan in shock, unable to believe what had just happened. But Nathan wasn't finished. "You want to know what love looks like?" he said, grabbing Sophia by the waist and pulling her close. "This is love. Sophia understands me. She appreciates me. She makes me feel like a man." Victoria watched in horror as Nathan kissed Sophia passionately, right in front of her. The room erupted in cheers and applause from Nathan's friends, and Victoria realized that this had all been planned. They had wanted her to see this. They had wanted to humiliate her. "Nathan," Victoria whispered, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "How could you do this to me? How could you bring another woman into our home?" Nathan pulled away from Sophia and looked at Victoria with cold, cruel eyes. "Because she's better than you in every way," he said. "She's prettier, she's funnier, she's better in bed. She's everything you're not." Victoria felt something break inside her chest. She had always known Nathan could be mean when he was drunk, but this was different. This was calculated cruelty designed to destroy her completely. "Get out," Nathan said suddenly, his voice low and dangerous. "Get out of my house." "This is my house too," Victoria said, finding her voice despite the pain. "I won't leave." That's when Nathan's face turned purple with rage. "You won't leave?" he screamed. "You won't leave? Well, let me help you make that decision." Before Victoria could react, Nathan grabbed her by the shoulders and shoved her hard toward the door. Victoria stumbled and fell to her knees on the hardwood floor, her palms scraping against the wood. The pain shot through her hands and knees, but it was nothing compared to the pain in her heart. "Stay down," Nathan snarled, standing over her. "This is where you belong. On your knees begging." Victoria looked up at him, her vision blurred with tears. The man standing above her was a stranger. There was no trace of the Nathan she had married, no hint of the man who had once promised to love and protect her. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Please don't do this." But Nathan just laughed, a sound that was more like a bark. "You want to stay?" he said. "Fine. But you'll stay on your knees where you belong." And then, to Victoria's complete shock and horror, Nathan drew back his leg and kicked her hard in the ribs. The impact sent her sprawling across the floor, gasping for breath as pain exploded through her body. The room fell silent except for the sound of Victoria's labored breathing. Even Nathan's friends seemed shocked by what they had just witnessed. But Nathan stood there, chest heaving, looking down at his wife with satisfaction. "That's what you get for disrespecting me in my own house," he said, his voice cold and steady now. "Remember this moment, Victoria. Remember what happens when you try to control me." Victoria lay on the floor, unable to move, unable to speak. She could taste blood in her mouth and her ribs felt like they were on fire. But more than the physical pain, she felt something else, a coldness spreading through her chest, freezing her heart solid. Sophia knelt down beside Nathan, running her hand up his arm. "That was so hot," she whispered loud enough for Victoria to hear. "I love a man who knows how to put a woman in her place." Nathan smiled down at Sophia, then looked back at Victoria. "Get up," he said. "Clean this mess up and then go sleep in the guest room. Sophia will be staying in our bedroom tonight." Victoria slowly pushed herself up to her hands and knees, her whole body shaking. She could feel Nathan's friends watching her, could hear their whispered comments and stifled laughter. The humiliation was complete, total, devastating. But as Victoria knelt there on the floor, something inside her began to change. The tears stopped flowing and the shaking stopped. A cold, hard clarity settled over her mind like ice forming on a lake. She looked up at Nathan one last time, memorizing his face in this moment. The cruel smile, the cold eyes, the way he held another woman in their living room while his wife bled on the floor. She wanted to remember it all. "Okay," Victoria said quietly, her voice steady now. "I understand." Nathan seemed surprised by her calm response. "Good," he said uncertainly. "I'm glad we finally understand each other." Victoria nodded and slowly got to her feet, ignoring the pain in her ribs. She looked around the room at Nathan's friends, at Sophia, at the mess they had made of her home. She looked at the family photos on the mantel, at the wedding picture that still sat on the side table. "I understand perfectly," she said again, her voice growing stronger. "You've made everything very clear." Nathan frowned, as if he sensed something different in her tone but couldn't quite place what it was. "Victoria," he started to say, but she was already walking toward the stairs. "I'll clean this up tomorrow," she said without looking back. "Tonight I need to think." As Victoria climbed the stairs to the guest room, she could hear Nathan and his friends resuming their party below. She could hear Sophia's high-pitched laughter and Nathan's boastful voice telling some story about his work. But Victoria wasn't really listening anymore. She sat on the edge of the guest room bed and looked at her hands. Her palms were scraped and bleeding, her knees were bruised, and her ribs ached with every breath. But her mind was crystal clear for the first time in months. For years, she had made excuses for Nathan's behavior. She had convinced herself that his drinking was just a phase, that his cruel words were just frustration from work, that his growing distance was just a rough patch in their marriage. She had believed that if she just tried harder, loved him more, was more patient, things would get better. But tonight, Nathan had shown her the truth. He didn't just not love her anymore, he hated her. He wanted to hurt her, to humiliate her, to destroy her completely. And he had brought another woman into their home to help him do it. Victoria reached for her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the number for her lawyer, James Rodriguez. She had used him when she bought the house, and he had always told her to call if she ever needed anything. She wondered if he had meant anything like this. It was too late to call tonight, but tomorrow was a new day. Tomorrow she would start making some calls. Tomorrow she would start asking some questions. Tomorrow she would start planning. But tonight, she would lie in the guest room bed and listen to her husband celebrate her destruction with his friends and his mistress. She would let them think they had won. She would let Nathan believe he had broken her completely. Because Victoria had learned something important tonight. She had learned that Nathan didn't know her at all. He thought she was weak, pathetic, someone who would just take his abuse and keep coming back for more. He was about to find out how wrong he was. Victoria didn't sleep that night. She lay in the guest room bed, staring at the ceiling and listening to the sounds from downstairs. The party had continued until almost dawn, with Nathan and his friends getting louder and more obnoxious as the night wore on. She could hear furniture being moved around, glass breaking, and at one point someone had turned on music so loud that the walls shook. But Victoria didn't go downstairs to complain. She didn't try to stop them. Instead, she used the time to think, to plan, to remember things she had forgotten or chosen to ignore. Like the credit card statements she had found hidden in Nathan's desk drawer 3 months ago. Expensive dinners at restaurants she had never been to, hotel charges in the middle of the week when he was supposed to be at work, charges at jewelry stores for gifts she had never received. When she had asked Nathan about them, he had exploded with rage, accusing her of spying on him and violating his privacy. He had been so angry, so indignant, that Victoria had actually apologized for bringing it up. She had convinced herself that there must be some innocent explanation. Now she realized how foolish she had been. Nathan had been having an affair for months, maybe longer. All those late nights at the office, all those business trips, all those times he had been too tired or too busy to spend time with her, he had been with Sophia. Victoria thought about Sophia, about the way she had worn Victoria's blouse like some kind of trophy. About the way she had filmed Victoria's humiliation with her phone, like it was some kind of entertainment. About the way she had kissed Nathan while Victoria lay bleeding on the floor. The rage that filled Victoria's chest was unlike anything she had ever felt before. It was cold and sharp and clean like a blade made of ice. She had never hated anyone in her life, but she hated Sophia. She hated Nathan. She hated all of them. Around 6 in the morning, Victoria finally heard Nathan's friends leaving. She listened to their drunken goodbyes, their crude jokes about what they had witnessed, their promises to do it again soon. Then she heard Nathan and Sophia stumbling up the stairs to the master bedroom, her bedroom, with her furniture and her clothes and her photographs. Victoria closed her eyes and tried to block out the sounds that followed. She had never imagined that betrayal could feel like this, like someone had reached into her chest and torn out her heart while it was still beating. But by the time the sun came up, Victoria had made her decision. She was done being Nathan's victim. She was done being the pathetic wife who begged for scraps of affection from a man who despised her. She was done being weak. Victoria got up and looked at herself in the guest room mirror. Her face was pale and drawn, with dark circles under her eyes. There was a bruise on her left cheek where Nathan had hit her, and her lips were swollen from where she had bitten them to keep from crying out when he kicked her. But her eyes were different now. They were hard and cold and determined. They were the eyes of a woman who had been pushed too far. Victoria showered and dressed carefully in her best business suit. She had that presentation at work today, the one she had been preparing for weeks. The one that could determine whether she got the promotion she had been working toward for 2 years. Nathan had tried to ruin that too, keeping her awake all night with his party. But Victoria wouldn't let him. She would go to work, give her presentation, and show her bosses that she was the professional they needed for the senior management position. Because now, more than ever, Victoria needed that job. She needed the financial independence, the respect, the power that came with it. She needed to be strong enough to stand on her own. Victoria packed a bag with enough clothes for a few days and put it in her car. She wasn't sure where she would go tonight, but she knew she couldn't stay in the house. Not with Nathan and Sophia playing house in her bedroom. Before she left, Victoria walked through the house one more time, surveying the damage from the party. The living room was destroyed, furniture overturned, carpet stained, broken glass everywhere. The kitchen was filled with empty bottles and dirty dishes. Someone had burned a hole in her favorite tablecloth with a cigarette. 8 years of building a home together, and Nathan had let his friends destroy it in one night. Victoria took pictures of everything with her phone, documenting the damage. She wasn't sure why yet, but something told her she might need the evidence later. As she was leaving, Victoria ran into Mrs. Patterson, their elderly neighbor who was watering her flowers in the front yard. Mrs. Patterson took one look at Victoria's bruised face and gasped. "Oh my goodness, dear," Mrs. Patterson said, dropping her watering can. "What happened to you? Are you all right?" Victoria had always liked Mrs. Patterson. She was a kind woman who had lived in the neighborhood for 30 years and always had a smile and a wave for everyone. Victoria had often helped her with her groceries or her garden when Nathan was too busy to notice. "I'm fine," Victoria said automatically, but Mrs. Patterson wasn't fooled. "That's a nasty bruise," Mrs. Patterson said, her voice gentle but concerned. "Did you fall down?" Victoria hesitated. She had spent so many years covering for Nathan, making excuses for his behavior, pretending everything was fine. But looking at Mrs. Patterson's kind, worried face, Victoria found herself telling the truth. "Nathan hit me," she said quietly. "Last night." Mrs. Patterson's face went pale. "Oh, honey," she whispered. "I'm so sorry. I heard the noise from the party, but I didn't know. I should have called the police." "It's okay," Victoria said, though it wasn't okay at all. "I'm handling it." Mrs. Patterson reached out and took Victoria's hand. "You don't have to handle it alone," she said. "I have a daughter who went through something similar. If you need help, if you need someone to talk to, I'm here." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Thank you," she said. "I really appreciate that." "Promise me you'll be careful," Mrs. Patterson said. "And promise me you won't go back to him. Men like that, they don't change. They only get worse." Victoria nodded. "I promise," she said, and meant it. As Victoria drove to work, she thought about Mrs. Patterson's words. She thought about how Nathan had escalated from cruel words to physical violence in one night. She thought about how he had looked at her afterward, with satisfaction and contempt, like hurting her had given him pleasure. Mrs. Patterson was right. Nathan wouldn't change. He would only get worse. And Victoria refused to spend the rest of her life being his punching bag. The presentation went better than Victoria had expected. Despite her lack of sleep and emotional turmoil, she delivered a flawless performance that impressed her bosses and colleagues. The promotion wasn't guaranteed, but Victoria could tell from their reactions that she was the front runner. During her lunch break, Victoria called James Rodriguez, her lawyer. His secretary said he was in court, but could see her later that afternoon. Victoria made an appointment for 4 o'clock. Then Victoria called her bank and asked about the status of all her accounts. She had been careful over the years to maintain some financial independence, keeping her own checking and savings accounts separate from the joint accounts she shared with Nathan. She was relieved to learn that Nathan had no access to her personal accounts. Next, Victoria called her insurance company to ask about her policy. She had been the one to set up their homeowners and car insurance, and both policies were in her name. She made a note to herself to ask James about the implications of that. Finally, Victoria called her best friend Rachel, who lived across the country in California. Rachel had been Victoria's college roommate, and they had stayed close over the years despite the distance. Rachel had never liked Nathan, though she had been too polite to say so directly. "Victoria." Rachel's voice was warm and happy. "This is such a nice surprise. How are you?" Victoria had planned to ease into the conversation, to find a gentle way to explain what had happened. But hearing Rachel's voice, so familiar and comforting, broke down the walls Victoria had built around her emotions. "Nathan hit me," Victoria said, and started to cry. For the next hour, Rachel listened while Victoria told her everything. About the party, about Sophia, about Nathan's cruelty and humiliation. About the years of emotional abuse that Victoria was finally ready to admit to herself. "I'm flying out there," Rachel said when Victoria finished. "I'll be on the next plane." "You don't have to do that," Victoria protested. "I know you're busy with work and the kids." "Are you crazy?" Rachel said. "My best friend's husband just assaulted her, and you think I'm going to stay here and send a sympathy card? I'm coming, and I'm bringing my brother Mike. You remember Mike, right? The one who's a private investigator." Victoria did remember Mike. He was a former police officer who had started his own investigation business after retiring from the force. He was a big, intimidating man who had always been very protective of his sister. "Rachel, I don't know if that's necessary," Victoria said. "It's necessary," Rachel said firmly. "Trust me on this. If Nathan is the kind of man who hits women, then you need to know everything about him before you file for divorce. Mike can help with that." The word, divorce, hit Victoria like a physical blow. She knew that's where this was heading, but hearing it said out loud made it real in a way that scared her. "I'm scared," Victoria admitted. "I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be alone." "You won't be alone," Rachel said. "You have me and you have Mike and you have your lawyer. And Victoria? You're stronger than you think. You always have been." After Victoria hung up with Rachel, she sat in her car outside the office building and tried to process everything that had happened in the last 18 hours. This time yesterday, she had been a married woman trying to save her relationship. Now she was planning a divorce and meeting with lawyers. But as Victoria looked at herself in the rearview mirror, she realized something had changed. The woman looking back at her wasn't the same woman who had begged Nathan for forgiveness the night before. This woman looked determined, focused, ready to fight. Victoria touched the bruise on her cheek and made herself a promise. Nathan would pay for what he had done to her. Not just the physical assault but the years of emotional abuse, the humiliation, the betrayal. He would pay for all of it. And when she was done with him, Nathan would regret the day he ever laid a hand on her. James Rodriguez was exactly the kind of lawyer Victoria needed. He was in his 50s, with silver hair and kind eyes, but there was a steeliness about him that suggested he didn't lose often. His office was lined with law books and awards, and Victoria felt a sense of relief just sitting across from his desk. "Mrs. Blackwood," he said, studying the photographs Victoria had taken that morning. "I have to ask, have you sought medical attention for your injuries?" Victoria touched her ribs, which were still aching. "I'm okay," she said. "It's just bruises." "With respect, you're not a doctor," James said gently. "I'm going to recommend that you see a physician today. We need documentation of your injuries, and more importantly, we need to make sure you're not seriously hurt." Victoria nodded. She hadn't thought about the legal implications of documenting her injuries, but it made sense. "Now," James continued, "tell me about your marriage. How long have you been together? What assets do you share? Do you have children?" Victoria spent the next hour giving James a complete picture of her life with Nathan. They had been married for 8 years, together for 10. They owned the house jointly, though Victoria had put down the larger down payment from her inheritance when her grandmother died. They had 2 cars, both paid off. No children, though Victoria had wanted them desperately. "What about finances?" James asked. "Who handles the money in your household?" "We both do," Victoria said. "We have joint checking and savings accounts, but I also have my own accounts that I had before we got married. Nathan has his own accounts too." "Do you know how much money Nathan has in his personal accounts?" Victoria frowned. "Not exactly. He's always been secretive about his finances. He says it's because he wants to surprise me with gifts or trips, but—" She trailed off, realizing how naive that sounded now. "But you don't get gifts or trips," James said. "No," Victoria admitted. "I don't." James made some notes on his legal pad. "What about debts? Credit cards, loans, mortgages?" "The house has a mortgage, but it's almost paid off. We have a couple of credit cards, but I thought the balances were low." Victoria paused, remembering something. "Actually, I found some statements a few months ago that showed large charges I didn't recognize. When I asked Nathan about them, he got very angry." "What kind of charges?" "Restaurants, hotels, jewelry stores. Things that didn't make sense if he was just working late or traveling for business." James nodded. "We'll need to get copies of all your financial records. Bank statements, credit card statements, tax returns, everything. I have a feeling your husband has been hiding more than just an affair." Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" "In my experience, men who are having affairs often use marital funds to support their other relationships. Expensive dinners, hotel rooms, gifts for their mistresses. It's possible Nathan has been using your money to fund his relationship with this other woman." The thought made Victoria feel sick. She had been working 60-hour weeks to help pay for their house, their cars, their life together. Had Nathan been taking that money and spending it on Sophia? "What can we do about it?" Victoria asked. "First, we document everything. Then we freeze the joint accounts so Nathan can't spend any more marital assets. After that, we file for divorce and demand a full accounting of where every penny has gone." Victoria took a deep breath. "How long will this take?" "That depends on how cooperative Nathan is," James said. "If he agrees to a fair settlement, it could be relatively quick. If he fights us, it could take months or even years." "He'll fight," Victoria said without hesitation. "Nathan doesn't give up anything without a battle." James smiled grimly. "Then we'll be ready for a battle. But first, let's make sure we have all the ammunition we need." After leaving James's office, Victoria drove to the urgent care clinic he had recommended. The doctor who examined her confirmed that she had bruised ribs and soft tissue damage, but nothing was broken. He took photographs of her injuries and wrote a detailed report that James could use in court. "Have you considered filing a police report?" the doctor asked as he finished his examination. Victoria had been thinking about that all day. "I don't know," she said. "Will it help?" "It creates an official record of what happened," the doctor said. "And it shows that you took the assault seriously. That can be important in divorce proceedings." Victoria made another appointment with James for the next morning, then drove to the police station. The officer who took her statement was professional and sympathetic, but Victoria could tell he had seen this kind of thing many times before. "The photos from the doctor will help," he said as he completed the paperwork. "And the fact that you reported it within 24 hours. Do you have somewhere safe to stay tonight? Victoria nodded. I'm staying with a friend. It wasn't exactly true yet, but Rachel would be arriving soon, and Victoria had already booked them a hotel room. Good, the officer said. I have to ask, do you want to press charges? Victoria hesitated. Part of her wanted to see Nathan arrested, wanted him to face consequences for what he had done. But another part of her was afraid of escalating the situation. Can I think about it? She asked. Of course. You have time to decide. But don't wait too long. The sooner you act, the stronger your case will be. As Victoria left the police station, she felt a strange mix of empowerment and fear. She had taken steps to protect herself, to document what Nathan had done, to start building a case against him. But she also knew that when Nathan found out what she was doing, he would be furious. Victoria's phone rang as she was driving back to the hotel. It was Nathan. Where are you? He demanded without preamble. I came home and you're not here. I'm staying somewhere else tonight, Victoria said, keeping her voice steady. What do you mean, somewhere else? This is your home. Get back here right now. No, Victoria said, and the word felt like a small victory. I'm not coming back tonight. There was a pause, and Victoria could hear Sophia's voice in the background, though she couldn't make out the words. Fine, Nathan said finally. But don't think you can just disappear. This is my house too, and I want you back here tomorrow. We'll see, Victoria said and hung up. Her phone immediately started ringing again, but Victoria turned it off. She didn't want to hear Nathan's voice, didn't want to listen to his demands or his threats. For the first time in years, she was making her own decisions about her life. Rachel arrived at the hotel that evening along with her brother Mike. Victoria had forgotten how imposing Mike could be. He was 6 feet 4 inches tall and built like a linebacker, with the kind of presence that made people instinctively step aside. Let me see your face, Rachel said as soon as she walked into the hotel room. She examined Victoria's bruises with the careful attention of someone who had raised 3 children and knew what real injuries looked like. I'm going to kill him, Rachel said quietly. No, you're not, Mike said from where he was setting up his laptop on the hotel room desk. But we are going to make him wish he had never been born. Mike had already started working on Nathan's background. As a private investigator, he had access to databases and resources that regular people didn't. Tell me about this guy, Mike said, pulling up a chair next to Victoria. What does he do for work? Where does he hang out? Who are his friends? Victoria told Mike everything she could remember about Nathan's life. He worked in sales for a technology company, made decent money but nothing spectacular. He liked to drink at a sports bar called Murphy's with his work friends. He played golf on weekends and belonged to a gym downtown. What about this woman he's having an affair with? Mike asked. Sophie, you said? Sophia, Victoria corrected. I don't know her last name. She looked young, maybe mid-20s. Blonde hair, pretty. She was wearing my clothes. Mike typed notes into his laptop. I'll find her, he said. And I'll find out everything about her. How long they've been together, where she works, where she lives. Everything. Is that legal? Victoria asked. Mike grinned. Everything I do is completely legal. I'm just very good at finding public information that most people don't know how to access. Rachel sat down on the bed next to Victoria. How are you holding up? She asked. I don't know, Victoria admitted. Yesterday I was trying to save my marriage. Today I'm planning a divorce and filing police reports. It doesn't feel real. The first step is always the hardest, Rachel said. But you're doing the right thing. You can't stay with a man who hits you. I know, Victoria said. But I'm scared. Nathan has always been controlling, but I've never seen him like this before. I don't know what he's capable of. Mike looked up from his laptop. That's why we're here, he said. To make sure you're safe while we figure out what kind of man your husband really is. Victoria felt a wave of gratitude wash over her. For the first time since Nathan had hit her, she didn't feel alone. She had people on her side, people who cared about her and wanted to help. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Both of you. I don't know how to repay you. You don't have to repay us, Rachel said. You just have to promise me you'll never let anyone treat you like that again. I promise, Victoria said and meant it. As the evening wore on, Mike shared some of his preliminary findings. Nathan's credit report showed several accounts that Victoria didn't know about, including a credit card with a large balance and a personal loan he had taken out 6 months ago. What was the loan for? Victoria asked. I don't know yet, Mike said. But I'll find out. I'll also find out where the money went. Victoria thought about Nathan's secretiveness around money, his anger when she had questioned the credit card charges, his insistence that she didn't need to know about his finances. "I think he's been planning this for a while," she said suddenly. "The affair, maybe even leaving me. I think he's been moving money around, getting ready." "That's exactly what I think too," Mike said. "But here's the thing, if he's been using marital assets to fund his affair or to hide money from you, that's going to work in your favor in the divorce." Rachel squeezed Victoria's hand. "You're going to be okay," she said. "Better than okay. You're going to come out of this stronger and happier than you've ever been." Victoria looked at her reflection in the hotel room mirror. The bruises on her face were already starting to fade, but the change in her eyes was permanent. She was no longer the woman who had begged Nathan for forgiveness. She was someone else now. Someone harder, smarter, more determined. Someone who was going to make Nathan pay for every moment of pain he had caused her. And she was just getting started. Victoria woke up the next morning feeling more rested than she had in months. The hotel bed was comfortable, but more importantly, she had slept without fear. For the first time in years, she hadn't spent the night wondering if Nathan would come home drunk and angry, hadn't listened for his footsteps on the stairs, hadn't held her breath waiting for him to explode over some imagined slight. Rachel was already awake, sitting by the window with a cup of coffee and her laptop. "Morning," she said softly. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in a long time," Victoria admitted. "What are you working on?" "Research," Rachel said, turning the laptop screen toward Victoria. "I've been looking up everything I can find about divorce law in this state. Did you know that physical abuse can affect property division?" Victoria sat up straighter. "What do you mean?" "In some cases, courts will award a larger share of marital assets to the victim of domestic violence. It's called economic remedy for misconduct. Your lawyer probably knows all about it, but I wanted to make sure you were informed." Mike emerged from the bathroom, already dressed and ready for the day. "I've got some interesting news," he said, settling into the chair across from Victoria. "I ran a background check on your husband last night." "What did you find?" Victoria asked. "Nathan Blackwood has been a very busy man," Mike said, consulting his notes. "He's got 3 credit cards you don't know about, a personal loan from a payday lender, and a second mortgage on your house that was taken out 8 months ago." Victoria felt the blood drain from her face. "A second mortgage? That's impossible. I would have had to sign for that." Mike's expression was grim. "Not if he forged your signature. Which, based on what I'm seeing here, is exactly what he did." "That's fraud," Rachel said, her voice sharp with anger. "He committed fraud against his own wife." "It gets worse," Mike continued. "I also found records of wire transfers from your joint accounts to an account in the Cayman Islands. Small amounts but regular. About $2,000 a month for the past year." Victoria stared at Mike in shock. "He's been stealing from me? That's what it looks like. And I'm betting that money is going to fund his exit strategy. He's probably been planning to leave you for months, maybe even longer." Victoria felt a rage so pure and cold that it almost took her breath away. While she had been trying to save their marriage, Nathan had been systematically stealing from her and planning his escape. While she had been working overtime to pay their bills, he had been funneling their money to offshore accounts. "How much?" she asked quietly. "So far, I've tracked about $30,000, Mike said. "But I'm still digging. There could be more." $30,000. Victoria thought about all the time she had skipped buying clothes for herself so they could afford the mortgage payment. All the time she had eaten lunch at her desk instead of going out with colleagues to save money. All the time she had suggested they stay home instead of going on vacation because they needed to be financially responsible. "I'm going to destroy him," Victoria said, her voice deadly calm. Rachel and Mike exchanged glances. "That's the spirit," Rachel said. "But we need to be smart about this. We need to document everything, build an airtight case, and then hit him with everything we've got." "What's the plan?" Victoria asked. Mike pulled out a folder full of documents. "First, we're going to freeze all the joint accounts so he can't steal any more money. Then we're going to file for divorce and demand a full forensic accounting of all marital assets. We're going to trace every penny he's hidden and claw it all back." "What about the house?" Victoria asked. "He forged my signature on the second mortgage. Can we fix that?" "We can try," Mike said. "Fraud is a serious crime, and if we can prove he forged your signature, the mortgage company will have to deal with it. At minimum, it will give us leverage in the divorce negotiations." Victoria thought about Nathan sleeping in their bed with Sophia, probably congratulating himself on how cleverly he had orchestrated Victoria's humiliation. He probably thought she was broken, defeated, ready to accept whatever scraps he was willing to throw her way. He had no idea what was coming. "There's something else," Mike said. "I found out who your husband's girlfriend is. Her name is Sophia Chin and she's 24 years old. She works as a waitress at that sports bar Nathan likes to go to." "Murphy's?" Victoria said. "That's right. She's been working there for about 8 months, which is probably when they met. She's got a criminal record: shoplifting, writing bad checks, possession of marijuana. Nothing major, but it shows a pattern of poor judgment." Victoria absorbed this information. Sophia wasn't just Nathan's affair partner, she was a criminal who had targeted a married man with assets. Victoria wondered if Sophia had pursued Nathan specifically because she knew he had money, or if it was just a happy coincidence. "I want to know everything about her," Victoria said. "Where she lives, who she's friends with, what she spends money on. Everything." "Already on it," Mike said. "She lives in a studio apartment about 10 minutes from Murphy's. Her rent is $800 a month, which is interesting because she only makes about $1,500 a month at the restaurant." "How is she paying for the apartment?" Rachel asked. "Good question," Mike said. "I'm betting Nathan is helping her out. Which means he's using marital assets to support his girlfriend." Victoria felt another wave of cold rage. Nathan was not only cheating on her and stealing from her, he was using her money to pay for his mistress's lifestyle. "I want to meet with my lawyer this morning," Victoria said. "I want to file papers today." "Are you sure you're ready for that?" Rachel asked gently. "Once you file, there's no going back. Nathan will know you're serious about divorce." "I'm sure," Victoria said. "I should have done this months ago." Victoria called James Rodriguez and scheduled an emergency meeting for that morning. Then she called her office and told them she needed to take a personal day. She had been with the company for 5 years and had never taken an unscheduled day off, so her supervisor didn't question it. As they prepared to leave the hotel, Victoria's phone rang. It was Nathan again. "Answer it," Mike said. "But put it on speaker so we can hear what he says." Victoria answered the call. "Hello, Nathan. Where the hell are you?" Nathan's voice was loud and angry. "I've been calling you all night. You need to get home right now." "I'm not coming home," Victoria said calmly. "I think we need some time apart." "Time apart?" Nathan's voice rose to a shout. "You don't get to make that decision by yourself. I'm your husband and I'm telling you to come home." "Actually, I do get to make that decision," Victoria said. "And I've decided I don't want to be around you right now." There was a pause and Victoria could hear Sophia's voice in the background again. She was probably still in Victoria's house, probably still wearing Victoria's clothes. "Fine," Nathan said finally. "But don't think you can just disappear and avoid your responsibilities. You have bills to pay, a house to maintain. You can't just run away like a child." "I'm not running away," Victoria said. "I'm protecting myself." "Protecting yourself from what?" Nathan's voice was mocking now. "From your loving husband who works hard to support you? From the man who gave you a beautiful home and a comfortable life?" Victoria almost laughed. Nathan really did think she was stupid. He thought she didn't know about Sophia, about the stolen money, about his plans to leave her. "You're right," she said, injecting a note of defeat into her voice. "I'm sorry. I'm just confused right now. I need a little time to think." Nathan's tone softened slightly. "That's better. Look, I know things got a little heated the other night. Maybe I had too much to drink, maybe I said some things I shouldn't have. But we can work through this." "Maybe," Victoria said, though the word tasted like poison in her mouth. "I just need a few days." "Okay," Nathan said. "But Victoria? Don't do anything stupid. Don't talk to lawyers or start spreading lies about me. This is between us and we can handle it like adults." "Of course," Victoria said. "I would never do anything like that." After she hung up, Mike was grinning. "That was perfect," he said. "You let him think you're still the same weak woman he married. He has no idea what's coming." "Good," Victoria said. "Let's keep it that way." At James Rodriguez's office, Victoria handed over all the information Mike had gathered. James studied the documents with the focused attention of a prosecutor building a case. "This is excellent work," he said finally. "We have clear evidence of fraud, theft, and domestic violence. We can file for divorce today and request an emergency injunction to freeze all marital assets." "How long will that take?" Victoria asked. "If we file this morning, we can have the papers served by this afternoon," James said. "The injunction should be in place by tomorrow morning." Victoria thought about Nathan's reaction when he realized he couldn't access their money. He would be furious, probably violent. But he would also be trapped, unable to steal any more from her or transfer assets to his offshore accounts. "Do it," she said. James spent the next hour preparing the divorce papers and the motion for an emergency injunction. Victoria signed document after document, each signature feeling like another step toward freedom. "There's one more thing," James said. "Given Nathan's history of violence, I'm going to recommend that you file for a restraining order as well. The police report from yesterday will support that." Victoria hesitated. A restraining order felt like such a dramatic step, like something that happened to other people. But then she remembered the look in Nathan's eyes when he had kicked her, the satisfaction on his face when she had fallen to the floor. "Yes," she said. "I want the restraining order." By noon, all the papers were filed. Victoria sat in her car outside the courthouse, feeling like she had just jumped off a cliff. There was no going back now. Nathan would be served with divorce papers within hours, and by tomorrow morning he would discover that all their accounts were frozen. Victoria's phone rang. It was her boss calling to check on her. "I'm fine," Victoria told him. "Just dealing with some personal issues. I'll be back tomorrow." "Take all the time you need," her boss said. "And Victoria? That presentation you gave yesterday was outstanding. The board was very impressed." Victoria smiled for the first time in days. "Thank you. That means a lot." "We'll be making a decision about the promotion soon," her boss continued. "I think you'll be very happy with the outcome." After she hung up, Victoria sat in her car and thought about what her life might look like in a few months. She would be divorced, but she would also be free. She would have her own place, her own money, her own life. She might even have a promotion and a new job title. For the first time since this nightmare began, Victoria felt hopeful. She had a plan, she had allies, and she had the law on her side. Nathan had made the mistake of underestimating her, of thinking she was weak and stupid and helpless. He was about to learn how wrong he was. Victoria spent the rest of the day with Mike, gathering evidence and building her case. They drove to the house while Nathan was at work, and Victoria packed more of her belongings. She was careful to take only things that were clearly hers: her clothes, her books, her personal items. She didn't want to give Nathan any ammunition to use against her. But she also took something Nathan wouldn't miss right away: copies of all their financial documents. Bank statements, tax returns, insurance policies, investment accounts. Everything was in the filing cabinet in Nathan's home office, and Victoria had always been the one to organize and maintain their records. "This is a gold mine," Mike said, photographing each document with his phone. "We can trace every transaction, every transfer, every suspicious expense." Victoria found something else in Nathan's desk that made her blood run cold. A letter from a divorce attorney, dated 3 months ago. The letter outlined strategies for hiding assets and minimizing alimony payments in case of divorce. "He's been planning this for months," Victoria said, her voice shaking with rage. "While I was trying to save our marriage, he was plotting to leave me with nothing." Mike read the letter over her shoulder. "This is actually good news for us," he said. "It proves premeditation. He wasn't just having an affair, he was systematically preparing to abandon you while stealing your money." Victoria found more evidence in Nathan's computer. Emails to Sophia talking about their future together, messages about apartments they had looked at, even a saved search on a real estate website for houses in Sophia's name. "He's been planning to buy her a house," Victoria said, staring at the screen. "With our money." "Not anymore," Mike said grimly. "By tomorrow morning he won't have access to a penny of marital assets." They spent the afternoon documenting everything. Mike took photographs of every room in the house, focusing on expensive items that Nathan might try to claim as his personal property. He also installed a small security camera in the living room, hidden behind a picture frame. "Why are we doing that?" Victoria asked. "Because I have a feeling Nathan is going to lose his temper when he gets served with papers," Mike said. "If he destroys property or threatens you, we want it on video." Victoria's phone rang as they were finishing up. It was Rachel calling from the hotel. "The process server just called," Rachel said. "Nathan has been served with the divorce papers. He's officially been notified that you're suing him for divorce and that all marital assets are frozen." Victoria felt a mixture of fear and satisfaction. How did he react? According to the process server, he turned white as a sheet and then started screaming. He demanded to know where you were, but the server couldn't tell him anything. "Good," Victoria said. "Let him wonder." "Victoria," Rachel said, her voice serious, "you need to be very careful tonight. Nathan is going to be furious and he's going to try to find you. Make sure you stay at the hotel and don't go anywhere alone." Victoria looked around the house one more time before they left. This had been her home for 8 years, the place where she had expected to raise children and grow old with Nathan. Now it felt like a crime scene, a place where her marriage had been murdered by betrayal and greed. But Victoria didn't feel sad anymore. She felt angry, and anger was much more useful than sadness. Back at the hotel, Victoria called James Rodriguez to check on the status of the restraining order. "It's been approved," James said. "Nathan cannot contact you, come near you, or go to your workplace. If he violates the order, he'll be arrested." "What about the house?" Victoria asked. "Can he stay there?" "For now, yes. But we're going to argue that he should be the one to leave, not you. He's the one who committed domestic violence, and he's the one who stole marital assets. You shouldn't have to give up your home because of his crimes." Victoria thought about Nathan and Sophia playing house in her bedroom, probably laughing about how they had fooled her. But their laughter wouldn't last long. By tomorrow Nathan would realize that Victoria wasn't the weak, stupid woman he had married. She was someone much more dangerous. That evening Victoria's phone started ringing constantly. Nathan called over and over, leaving increasingly angry voicemails. Victoria didn't answer, but she listened to the messages with Mike and Rachel. "Victoria, you need to call me back right now," Nathan said in the first message. "I don't know what game you're playing, but it needs to stop. Call me." The second message was angrier. "What the hell do you think you're doing? You can't just freeze our accounts without telling me. I have bills to pay, responsibilities. Call me back immediately." By the fifth message, Nathan was screaming. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you can just destroy my life and get away with it? Well, you're wrong. I know where you work and I know where your friends live. You can't hide from me forever." "That sounds like a threat," Rachel said. "It is a threat," Mike agreed. "And now we have it on recording. This will help with the restraining order case." Victoria felt a chill run down her spine. Nathan sounded genuinely unhinged, more dangerous than she had ever heard him. She was glad she had listened to Mike and Rachel about staying hidden. The next morning, Victoria woke up to find 17 missed calls from Nathan and 3 from unknown numbers. She also had a text message from Sophia. "You need to stop this crazy behavior and come home. Nathan is worried sick about you." Victoria showed the message to Mike and Rachel. "Sophia is texting me now," she said. "She's pretending to be concerned." "That's harassment," Mike said. "From both of them. We need to document all of this." Victoria called James to report the continued contact from Nathan and Sophia. James was pleased with the evidence they were gathering. "This pattern of harassment is going to work in our favor," he said. "It shows that Nathan is escalating his behavior despite the restraining order. We can use this to argue for a larger settlement." "What happens next?" Victoria asked. "Nathan's lawyer will probably try to negotiate," James said. "He'll want to avoid a lengthy court battle, especially once he realizes how much evidence we have against him. And if he doesn't want to negotiate? Then we go to trial and we destroy him in court," James said simply. "We have evidence of domestic violence, financial fraud, and systematic theft of marital assets. No judge is going to be sympathetic to Nathan's position." Victoria felt a surge of confidence. For the first time since this nightmare began, she felt like she was in control. Nathan had thought he was so clever, so manipulative, so much smarter than his stupid wife. But Victoria had allies now, resources, legal power. And she was just getting started. That afternoon, Mike made a discovery that changed everything. He had been tracing the wire transfers to the Cayman Islands, and he found something unexpected. "Victoria," he said, his voice tight with excitement, "I found where Nathan has been hiding the money. But it's not just your money." "What do you mean?" "He's been embezzling from his company," Mike said. "The transfers to the Cayman Islands include funds from his employer's accounts. Nathan isn't just a cheating husband, he's a white-collar criminal." Victoria stared at Mike in shock. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Mike said. "I've got bank records, transaction histories, everything. Nathan has been stealing from his company for at least a year, maybe longer." "How much?" "So far, I've tracked about $200,000. But there could be more." Victoria felt like she was in a dream. Nathan wasn't just a bad husband, he was a criminal who had been using her as cover for his illegal activities. If his company found out, he would be fired and probably prosecuted. "What do we do with this information?" Victoria asked. "We use it as leverage," Mike said. "Nathan is going to do everything he can to keep this quiet. If his company finds out he's been stealing, his life is over." Victoria thought about all the times Nathan had bragged about his success at work, all the times he had acted like he was such a good provider. It had all been built on lies and theft. I want to call his company, Victoria said. I want them to know what kind of man they're employing. Not yet, Mike said. Let's see what Nathan does first. If he's smart, he'll agree to a generous settlement to keep this quiet. If he's not smart, we'll destroy him completely. Victoria smiled, and it was not a nice smile. Nathan had always underestimated her, had always treated her like she was stupid and weak. He had humiliated her in front of his friends, kicked her while she was down, and tried to steal everything she had worked for. But Victoria wasn't weak anymore. She was furious, and she was powerful, and she was going to make Nathan pay for every moment of pain he had caused her. The war was just beginning, and Victoria intended to win. Victoria woke up on the third morning after filing for divorce to find her phone buzzing with notifications. Nathan had called 12 times during the night, and there were several text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. He's using other people's phones now, Rachel observed, reading the messages over Victoria's shoulder. He's getting desperate. The messages were a mixture of pleading and threats. Some begged Victoria to come home and work things out. Others warned her that she was making a huge mistake and would regret her actions. He still doesn't understand what he's up against, Mike said from his laptop. He thinks this is just a temper tantrum that will blow over. Victoria felt a cold satisfaction. Nathan was about to learn exactly what he was up against. At 10 o'clock that morning, Victoria's phone rang. It was James Rodriguez. Nathan's lawyer just called, James said. They want to meet for settlement negotiations. Already? Victoria was surprised. She had expected Nathan to drag things out as long as possible. Nathan's attorney is smarter than Nathan is, James said. He's probably realized that his client is in serious trouble. The evidence of domestic violence and financial fraud is overwhelming. What are they offering? Victoria asked. Right now they're offering a 50-50 split of all marital assets. Nathan keeps the house, you keep your retirement accounts, and you split the savings. Victoria almost laughed. After everything he's done, he wants to split things evenly? That's their opening offer, James said. But we're not accepting it. I'm going to counter with a proposal that gives you 70% of all marital assets, plus alimony for 5 years. What about the stolen money? The offshore accounts? That's where things get interesting, James said. I'm going to demand that Nathan return every penny he stole, plus interest and penalties. And if he doesn't agree, we're going to report his embezzlement to his company and the FBI. Victoria felt a thrill of anticipation. Nathan had played a dangerous game, and now he was going to pay the price. When is the meeting? She asked. Tomorrow afternoon. Are you ready for this? Victoria thought about Nathan's face when he had kicked her, about the laughter of his friends, about Sophia wearing her clothes. She thought about the months of lies, the stolen money, the systematic betrayal of everything she had believed about her marriage. I'm ready, she said. That afternoon, Victoria met with a different kind of professional, a private banker who specialized in helping people protect their assets during divorce proceedings. Mike had recommended him, and Victoria wanted to make sure her own money was safe from Nathan's schemes. You were smart to maintain separate accounts, the banker told her. Your husband can't touch any of the money that's in your name only. What about my retirement accounts? Victoria asked. Those are through my company. Those are yours too, assuming you set them up before you were married. Your husband might be entitled to a portion of what you've contributed during the marriage, but the bulk of it is protected. Victoria felt another wave of relief. Nathan had been so focused on stealing from their joint accounts that he hadn't been able to touch her personal savings or retirement funds. I want to move my money to a different bank, Victoria said. Somewhere Nathan can't find it. That's a good idea, the banker agreed. We can set up new accounts at a different institution, and we can make sure Nathan has no access to any information about them. As Victoria was leaving the bank, her phone rang. It was her boss. Victoria, I have some good news, he said. The board has made a decision about the promotion. Congratulations, you're our new director of strategic planning. Victoria felt tears of joy spring to her eyes. Thank you, she said. Thank you so much. You've earned it, her boss said. Your presentation last week was outstanding, and frankly, your work has been exemplary for years. The position comes with a 40% salary increase and a signing bonus. Victoria almost laughed. While Nathan had been trying to steal her money and destroy her life, she had been earning a promotion that would make her financially independent. The irony was perfect. When do I start? She asked. Next Monday if you're ready. We know you're dealing with some personal issues, but we're confident you can handle the new responsibilities. Victoria assured him she would be ready, and hung up feeling like she was floating on air. Nathan had tried to crush her spirit, to make her feel worthless and dependent. Instead, she was stronger than ever and about to become more successful than she had ever dreamed. That evening, Victoria celebrated with Rachel and Mike at a nice restaurant. For the first time in months, she felt genuinely happy. She had a new job, a plan for her future, and people who cared about her. To new beginnings, Rachel said, raising her glass. To Victoria, Mike added. The strongest woman I know. Victoria felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had been so focused on Nathan's betrayal that she had forgotten she had people in her life who truly loved and supported her. To justice, Victoria said, raising her own glass. And to making sure Nathan gets exactly what he deserves. The next morning, Victoria dressed carefully for the settlement meeting. She chose a tailored business suit that made her look professional and confident. She wanted Nathan to see that she wasn't the broken woman he had left crying on the floor. The meeting was held at James Rodriguez's office. Nathan arrived with his lawyer, a thin man named Stevens who looked nervous. Victoria was pleased to see that Nathan looked terrible. His face was pale, his eyes were bloodshot, and his hands were shaking slightly. Nathan, Victoria said politely as they took their seats around the conference table. You look tired. Nathan's eyes flashed with anger. Cut the act, Victoria. I know what you're trying to do. I'm not trying to do anything, Victoria said calmly. I'm just trying to end our marriage fairly. Fairly? Nathan's voice rose. You call freezing our accounts fair? You call trying to take everything I've worked for fair? James Rodriguez cleared his throat. Perhaps we should focus on the settlement proposals, he said. Mr. Stevens, I believe you have an offer for us. Stevens opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. My client is prepared to offer a 50-50 split of all marital assets, he said. Mrs. Blackwood would receive half of the house equity, half of the savings accounts, and half of the retirement funds. That's very generous, James said dryly. Unfortunately, we can't accept it. Nathan leaned forward. What do you mean you can't accept it? That's completely fair. Fair would be if you hadn't assaulted my client, James said. Fair would be if you hadn't stolen $30,000 from joint accounts. Fair would be if you hadn't committed fraud by forging her signature on a second mortgage. Stevens looked uncomfortable. Those are serious accusations, he said. Do you have proof? James opened his own folder and spread documents across the table. Bank records, wire transfer receipts, copies of the forged mortgage documents. Nathan's face went white as he recognized the evidence. How did you get these? Nathan demanded. It doesn't matter how we got them, James said. What matters is that we have them. Your client has committed multiple felonies and we have the evidence to prove it. This is blackmail, Nathan said, his voice shaking. No, James said. This is justice. Your client assaulted my client, stole her money, and committed fraud. Now he's going to pay the consequences. Stevens whispered something to Nathan, who shook his head violently. I'm not agreeing to anything, Nathan said. Victoria is my wife, and she's not taking everything I've worked for. Actually, James said, she's not your wife anymore. The divorce papers were filed 3 days ago. And as for everything you've worked for... He paused and smiled coldly. Well, we need to talk about that. James pulled out another folder, this one containing Mike's evidence of Nathan's embezzlement. It seems your client has been stealing from his employer as well as from his wife. $200,000 to be exact. Nathan's face went from white to green. You can't prove that, he said, but his voice was weak. We can and we will, James said. Unless, of course, your client is willing to be reasonable about the settlement. Stevens looked at Nathan, who was now sweating profusely. Perhaps we should take a break, Stevens said. I need to confer with my client. Take all the time you need, James said. But understand that our patience is limited. If we don't reach an agreement today, we'll be filing criminal charges tomorrow. Victoria watched Nathan fall apart with cold satisfaction. This was the man who had kicked her while she was down, who had humiliated her in front of his friends, who had stolen her money and planned to abandon her. Now he was trapped, facing prison time and the loss of everything he cared about. Nathan, Victoria said quietly, you did this to yourself. Nathan looked at her with pure hatred. You think you're so smart, he said. You think you've won. But you're wrong. I'll fight you every step of the way. No, Victoria said, her voice steady and sure. You won't. Because you can't afford to. One phone call to your company and your life is over. One call to the FBI and you're looking at federal charges. Nathan stared at her, and Victoria could see the exact moment when he realized the truth. She wasn't bluffing. She had the power to destroy him completely, and she was prepared to use it. "What do you want?" Nathan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Victoria smiled, and it was the coldest smile Nathan had ever seen. "I want everything," she said. "And I'm going to get it." The conference room fell silent after Victoria's declaration. Nathan stared at her as if seeing her for the first time, his face a mixture of fear and disbelief. Stevens, his lawyer, was frantically shuffling through papers, clearly trying to find some way to salvage his client's position. "Everything?" Nathan repeated, his voice cracking. "You can't be serious." "I'm completely serious," Victoria said, her voice steady and cold. "You tried to take everything from me, Nathan. You stole my money, betrayed my trust, and physically assaulted me. Now you get to experience what it feels like to lose everything you care about." Stevens cleared his throat. "Mrs. Blackwood, I understand you're angry, but we need to be realistic here. Even with the evidence you've presented, no court is going to award you 100% of the marital assets." James Rodriguez leaned back in his chair. "You're right, Mr. Stevens. A court probably wouldn't award my client everything. But a court also wouldn't have to deal with the embarrassment of having an embezzling employee on their payroll." "What are you saying?" Stevens asked, though his expression suggested he already knew. "I'm saying that your client's company has a right to know that they're employing a thief," James said. "And the FBI has a right to know that someone is moving stolen money through offshore accounts. Unless, of course, we can reach an agreement that makes such notifications unnecessary." Nathan slammed his fist on the table. "This is extortion." "No," Victoria said calmly. "This is consequence. You made choices, Nathan. You chose to have an affair. You chose to steal money. You chose to hit me. Now you get to live with the results of those choices." Stevens whispered urgently to Nathan, but Nathan shook his head. "I won't give her everything," he said. "I'd rather go to prison." "That can be arranged," James said dryly. "But I don't think you've thought this through. Prison is unpleasant, but it's not permanent. However, a federal conviction for embezzlement would follow you for the rest of your life. You'd never work in your field again. You'd be a convicted felon." Victoria watched Nathan's face as the reality of his situation sank in. He had thought he was so clever, so superior to his stupid wife. But now he was trapped by his own greed and cruelty. "Let me tell you what's going to happen," Victoria said, her voice growing stronger. "You're going to sign over your share of the house to me. You're going to return every penny you stole from our joint accounts, plus interest. You're going to pay back the money you embezzled from your company. And you're going to do it all quietly without making a scene." "And if I don't?" Nathan asked. "If you don't, I will personally deliver copies of all our evidence to your company's CEO, the FBI, and the local district attorney. I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of man you are." Nathan looked at Stevens, who nodded grimly. "She has you, Nathan. The evidence is overwhelming." "But what about Sophia?" Nathan asked desperately. "What about our future together?" Victoria felt a surge of disgust. Even now, facing the destruction of his life, Nathan was thinking about his mistress. "What about her?" Victoria asked. "Do you think she's going to stick around when you're broke and unemployed? Do you think she's going to visit you in prison?" Nathan's face crumpled. "You don't understand," he said. "I love her." "You love her?" Victoria laughed, and the sound was sharp and bitter. "You love her so much that you were willing to steal from me to pay for her apartment? You love her so much that you were willing to destroy our marriage and commit felonies to impress her?" Nathan's eyes filled with tears. "You wouldn't understand," he said. "You never understood what I needed." "What you needed?" Victoria's voice rose for the first time during the meeting. "What you needed was a therapist, not a mistress. What you needed was to be a decent human being instead of a criminal." Stevens tried to intervene. "Perhaps we should focus on the settlement terms," he said. "The terms are simple," James said. "Mr. Blackwood signs over all his interest in the marital home to Mrs. Blackwood. He returns the $30,000 he stole from their joint accounts. He pays Mrs. Blackwood alimony of $3,000 a month for 5 years. And he stays away from her permanently." "That's impossible," Nathan said. "I don't have $30,000 to give back." "Then you'd better figure out how to get it," Victoria said. "Maybe Sophia can help you. Or maybe you can ask your friends from the party. I'm sure they'd be happy to help after watching you assault your wife." Nathan's face flushed with shame. They don't understand what really happened." "They understand perfectly," Victoria said. "They watched you hit me and kick me while I was down. They cheered while you humiliated me. They're just as guilty as you are. Stevens looked at his notes. The alimony demand is excessive, he said. $3,000 a month for 5 years is $180,000. Consider it payment for 8 years of emotional abuse, James said. Plus interest on the money your client stole. Plus damages for the assault. Actually, when you think about it that way, we're being quite generous. Nathan was shaking now, his composure completely gone. I can't pay that, he said. Even if I keep my job, I can't afford that much. Then you'd better hope you can keep your job, Victoria said. Because if you lose it, you'll still owe me the money. This is insane, Nathan said, turning to his lawyer. They can't do this to me. There has to be some law, some protection. Stevens looked uncomfortable. Nathan, they have evidence of multiple felonies. Domestic violence, fraud, embezzlement. Any one of those charges could result in prison time. Multiple charges. He shrugged helplessly. Victoria felt a cold satisfaction watching Nathan realize the hopelessness of his situation. He had thought he was so clever, so much smarter than everyone else. He had thought he could manipulate and control and steal without consequences. I need time to think, Nathan said finally. You have until tomorrow morning, James said. After that, we file criminal charges and notify your employer. Nathan looked around the room desperately, as if hoping someone would offer him a way out. But there was no escape from what he had done. Nathan, Victoria said quietly, you did this to yourself. Every choice you made led to this moment. You could have been honest with me. You could have asked for a divorce instead of having an affair. You could have split our assets fairly instead of stealing from me. But you chose to be cruel and dishonest and criminal. I never meant for it to go this far, Nathan said, his voice breaking. Yes, you did, Victoria said. You planned this for months. You consulted with lawyers about hiding assets. You moved money to offshore accounts. You forged my signature on legal documents. This wasn't a mistake, Nathan. This was a calculated campaign to destroy my life. Nathan buried his face in his hands. What do you want me to say? That I'm sorry? That I made mistakes? I don't want you to say anything, Victoria said. I want you to sign the papers and disappear from my life forever. Stevens gathered his documents. We'll need until tomorrow to review everything, he said. Fine, James said. But understand that this offer expires at 9 a.m. tomorrow. After that, we proceed with criminal charges. As Nathan and his lawyer left the office, Victoria felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. The confrontation had taken more out of her than she had expected. How do you feel? James asked. Tired, Victoria admitted. But also, free. For the first time in years, I feel like I have control over my own life. You handled that perfectly, James said. You were calm, professional, and absolutely ruthless. Nathan never saw it coming. Victoria thought about the woman she had been just a week ago. That woman would have apologized to Nathan, would have begged him to come home, would have accepted whatever scraps of affection he was willing to offer. I'm not the same person I was, Victoria said. Nathan destroyed that woman when he hit me. What he doesn't realize is that he created someone much more dangerous. That evening, Victoria returned to the hotel to find Rachel and Mike waiting with champagne and takeout from her favorite restaurant. So, Rachel asked, how did it go? Victoria described the meeting in detail, watching her friends' faces light up with satisfaction as she explained Nathan's complete breakdown. He actually cried? Mike asked, grinning. Like a baby, Victoria confirmed. All his arrogance and cruelty just melted away when he realized I had all the evidence. Good, Rachel said fiercely. He deserves every bit of misery coming his way. Victoria's phone buzzed with a text message. It was from Sophia. Nathan told me what you're trying to do. You're a bitter, jealous woman who can't accept that your husband doesn't love you anymore. Stop trying to ruin his life. Victoria showed the message to Rachel and Mike, who both started laughing. She has no idea what's coming, Mike said. Wait until Nathan loses his job and can't afford to pay her rent anymore. Should I respond? Victoria asked. Absolutely, Rachel said. But keep it classy. Victoria typed back. Nathan is a criminal who stole money from me and his employer. He's also a man who hits women. If you think that's the kind of person you want to build a future with, that's your choice. But don't contact me again. Within minutes, Sophia responded, You're lying. Nathan would never do those things. Victoria took a screenshot of the message and sent it to James Rodriguez. Then she blocked Sophia's number. She'll figure out the truth soon enough, Victoria said. When Nathan can't afford to take care of her anymore, she'll move on to her next victim. What do you think Nathan will do? Rachel asked. Will he sign the papers? Victoria considered the question. He doesn't have a choice, she said finally. If he doesn't sign, he goes to prison and loses everything anyway. At least this way he has a chance to rebuild his life after he pays me back. You're being more generous than he deserves, Mike said. Maybe, Victoria agreed. But I don't want to spend the next 5 years dealing with criminal trials and appeals. I want this to be over so I can move on with my life. Victoria looked out the hotel window at the city lights below. Somewhere out there, Nathan was probably pacing around their house, trying to figure out how to escape the trap he had built for himself. Somewhere out there, Sophia was probably realizing that her sugar daddy wasn't as wealthy as she had thought. But Victoria wasn't thinking about them anymore. She was thinking about her new job, her new life, her new freedom. She was thinking about the woman she was becoming, stronger, smarter, more confident than she had ever been. Nathan had tried to break her, but instead he had forged her into something unbreakable. And tomorrow, when he signed those papers, Victoria would finally be free to discover who she really was. Victoria woke up the next morning to her phone ringing at 6 a.m. It was James Rodriguez. Nathan's lawyer called, James said without preamble. They want to meet again this morning. Steven says Nathan has something important to discuss. Victoria felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. What kind of something? He wouldn't say over the phone. But he sounded worried. I think Nathan might be ready to sign. Or he might be planning something desperate, Victoria said, remembering the rage in Nathan's eyes the day before. That's possible too, James admitted. Which is why I want you to bring Mike to the meeting. Just in case. Victoria dressed carefully again, choosing another professional outfit that made her feel powerful and in control. She had learned that clothing could be armor, and she needed all the protection she could get for whatever Nathan was planning. Mike drove her to James's office, and Victoria was surprised to see Nathan's car already in the parking lot. It was only 8:30 a.m., 30 minutes before their scheduled meeting. He's early, Mike observed. That's either a good sign or a very bad sign. When they entered the conference room, Victoria immediately noticed that Nathan looked even worse than he had the day before. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair was uncombed, and his hands were shaking. Stevens looked equally disheveled, as if he had been up all night. Thank you for meeting with us early, Stevens said. My client has something he wants to say. Nathan looked up at Victoria with red, swollen eyes. I want to confess, he said quietly. Victoria exchanged glances with James. Confess to what? Everything, Nathan said. The affair, the stolen money, the embezzlement. All of it. James leaned forward. Are you saying you want to accept our settlement terms? I'm saying I want to tell the truth, Nathan said. I'm tired of lying, tired of trying to cover up what I've done. I want to confess to everything and accept whatever punishment I deserve. Victoria stared at Nathan in shock. This wasn't what she had expected at all. She had thought he would either sign the papers or continue fighting. She hadn't expected him to completely surrender. Nathan, Stevens said urgently. We discussed this. You don't have to confess to anything. We can still negotiate. No, Nathan said firmly. I'm done negotiating. I'm done lying. I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not. Nathan turned to Victoria, his eyes filled with tears. I'm sorry, he said. I'm so sorry for everything I did to you. You didn't deserve any of it. Victoria felt a strange mix of emotions. Part of her was satisfied to see Nathan finally admitting his crimes. But another part of her was suspicious. Nathan had never apologized for anything in their entire marriage. Why was he starting now? What brought this on? Victoria asked. Nathan's face crumpled. Sophia left me, he said. Last night, after I told her about the meeting, she packed her bags and left. She said she couldn't be with a man who was broke and going to prison. Mike snorted. What a surprise. A gold digger abandoning ship when the money runs out. She took my credit cards, Nathan continued, and my watch and some cash I had hidden in the house. She cleaned out my personal bank account before she left. Victoria almost felt sorry for Nathan. Almost. But then she remembered the feeling of his foot connecting with her ribs, and the sympathy evaporated. So now that your girlfriend has abandoned you, you want to confess? Victoria asked. This isn't conscience, Nathan. This is desperation. Maybe it is, Nathan admitted. But I also realized something last night. I destroyed the best thing in my life for someone who never really cared about me. I threw away 8 years of marriage for a woman who was just using me. You didn't throw away our marriage, Victoria said coldly. You murdered it. With lies and betrayal and violence. Nathan flinched as if she had slapped him. I know, he said. I know I can never fix what I've done. But I want to try to make it right. How? Victoria asked. How do you plan to make up for years of emotional abuse? How do you make up for stealing my money and hitting me? I'll sign whatever papers you want me to sign, Nathan said. I'll give you the house, the money, everything. And I'll turn myself in to the police for the embezzlement. Stevens looked horrified. Nathan, you can't just confess to federal crimes. You need to think about this rationally. I have been thinking about it, Nathan said. All night. And I realized that I'd rather go to prison as an honest man than live free as a liar and a thief. Victoria studied Nathan's face, looking for signs of deception. But all she saw was exhaustion and genuine remorse. For the first time since she had known him, Nathan seemed to be telling the truth. You realize that if you confess to embezzlement, you'll go to federal prison? James asked. Even with cooperation and remorse, you're looking at several years. I know, Nathan said. But at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror again. Victoria felt a strange sense of anticlimax. She had been prepared for a fight, for Nathan to rage and threaten and try to manipulate his way out of trouble. She hadn't been prepared for complete surrender. What about the settlement? She asked. Are you prepared to agree to all our terms? Yes, Nathan said without hesitation. The house, the alimony, everything. You deserve it after what I put you through. James pulled out the settlement papers they had prepared. These documents transfer full ownership of the marital home to Mrs. Blackwood, require you to pay $30,000 in restitution, and establish alimony payments of $3,000 per month for 5 years. Nathan signed each page without reading it, his hand shaking slightly. When he was finished, he looked up at Victoria. I know you'll probably never forgive me, he said. But I want you to know that I loved you once. Before I became the kind of man who could hurt you, I really did love you. Victoria looked at Nathan for a long moment. The man sitting across from her bore little resemblance to the arrogant, cruel person who had kicked her while she was down. He looked broken, defeated, genuinely remorseful. I loved you too, Victoria said quietly. But love isn't enough when someone chooses to be cruel. Nathan nodded, tears streaming down his face. I know. I chose to be the worst version of myself and I have to live with that forever. After Nathan left with Stevens to drive to the police station, Victoria sat in the conference room feeling oddly empty. She had won everything she had wanted, but the victory felt hollow somehow. How do you feel? James asked. I don't know, Victoria admitted. I thought I'd feel more satisfied, I guess. But mostly I just feel sad. That's normal, James said. You've been through a traumatic experience. It's going to take time to process all of this. Mike was less philosophical. Don't feel sorry for him, he said. Nathan made his choices. He chose to have an affair, chose to steal money, chose to hit you. The consequences are his own fault. I know, Victoria said. And I don't regret holding him accountable. I just wish none of this had happened in the first place. That afternoon, Victoria returned to her house for the first time since filing for divorce. It felt strange walking through rooms that were now entirely hers, seeing furniture and belongings that Nathan would never touch again. The house was a mess. Nathan and Sophia had clearly been living like teenagers, leaving dirty dishes everywhere and treating Victoria's belongings carelessly. But Victoria didn't mind the mess. It would give her something to focus on while she adjusted to her new life. Victoria's phone rang as she was cleaning the kitchen. It was her boss. Victoria, I hope you don't mind me calling on your day off, he said. But I wanted to let you know that the board approved your start date for Monday. Are you ready to begin your new position? I'm ready, Victoria said, and realized she meant it. For the first time in months, she was genuinely excited about something. Excellent. We've prepared an office for you on the executive floor, and you'll have an assistant starting next week. After hanging up, Victoria stood in her kitchen and looked around at the house that was now entirely hers. It would need some changes, new paint, new furniture to replace the pieces that held bad memories. But it was a good house in a good neighborhood and it was hers. Victoria walked upstairs to the master bedroom and opened the closet. Nathan's clothes were gone, presumably taken when he packed his belongings the night before. But Victoria's clothes were still there, hanging in neat rows like they had been waiting for her to return. She pulled out a dress she hadn't worn in years, something bright and cheerful that Nathan had always criticized. He had said it was too colorful, too attention-seeking, too unprofessional. Victoria held the dress up to herself in the mirror and smiled. She was going to wear whatever she wanted now. She was going to live however she wanted, work however she wanted, love however she wanted. Nathan had tried to destroy her, but instead he had set her free. 3 weeks later, Victoria was settling into her new routine. Her promotion had come with not just a salary increase, but a new sense of purpose and confidence. She was good at her job, better than she had ever realized, and her colleagues respected her expertise. The house felt different now too. Victoria had hired a cleaning service to deep clean every room, and she had started redecorating. Gone were the dark, masculine colors Nathan had preferred, replaced with bright, cheerful tones that made Victoria smile every time she came home. Victoria was reviewing quarterly reports in her new office when her assistant knocked on the door. "Mrs. Blackwood? There's a call for you online too. The caller says it's urgent." Victoria picked up the phone to find Stevens, Nathan's lawyer, on the other end. "Mrs. Blackwood, I'm calling about Nathan," Stevens said. "He's been sentenced." Victoria felt her stomach clench. What was the sentence? 3 years in federal prison, followed by 2 years of supervised release. He pled guilty to embezzlement and received a reduced sentence for cooperation. Victoria absorbed this information. 3 years was a long time, but it was also less than Nathan could have received if he had fought the charges. "How is he handling it?" Victoria asked, not sure why she cared. "As well as can be expected," Stevens said. "He asked me to tell you that he's sorry again. And he wanted you to know that he's arranged for automatic alimony payments from his prison account." Victoria was surprised. Nathan would earn very little money in prison, and most inmates spent what they had on commissary items and phone calls. For him to ensure that Victoria continued receiving payments showed a level of responsibility she hadn't expected. "Thank you for letting me know," Victoria said. After hanging up, Victoria sat in her office and tried to process her feelings. Nathan was going to prison just as she had threatened. She had won completely. She had the house, the money, her freedom, and Nathan was paying the price for his crimes. So why didn't she feel more satisfied? Victoria's phone buzzed with a text message from Rachel. "Heard about Nathan's sentencing. How are you doing?" Victoria typed back, "I'm fine. It's what he deserved." But even as she sent the message, Victoria wasn't sure she believed it. 3 years in federal prison was a harsh consequence for a man who had made terrible choices but seemed genuinely remorseful. That evening, Victoria was at home preparing dinner when her doorbell rang. She looked through the peephole to see Mrs. Patterson standing on her front porch with a casserole dish. "I brought you some lasagna," Mrs. Patterson said when Victoria opened the door. "I thought you might be feeling a bit overwhelmed with everything that's happened." Victoria invited her neighbor in and made tea while Mrs. Patterson arranged the lasagna in the refrigerator. "I heard about Nathan's sentencing," Mrs. Patterson said gently. "I know this must be a difficult time for you." "Actually, I'm doing well," Victoria said. "Better than I have in years." "That's wonderful to hear," Mrs. Patterson said. "But you know, it's okay to have mixed feelings about all this. Even when someone has hurt us, it's natural to feel conflicted when they face serious consequences." Victoria looked at her neighbor with surprise. "How did you know I was feeling conflicted?" Mrs. Patterson smiled kindly. "Because you're a good person, dear. Good people don't take pleasure in others' suffering, even when that suffering is deserved." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know how to feel," she admitted. "Part of me is glad Nathan is facing consequences for what he did. But another part of me feels sad that things ended this way." "That's completely normal," Mrs. Patterson said. "You can be angry about what someone did to you while still feeling compassion for them as a human being. The two feelings aren't mutually exclusive." Victoria thought about Nathan's breakdown in the conference room, about his genuine remorse and his decision to confess everything. She thought about the man she had married 10 years ago, before he became someone who could steal and lie and hit women. "I keep wondering if there was something I could have done differently," Victoria said. "Some way I could have helped him before he became so lost." Mrs. Patterson reached across the table and took Victoria's hand. "Honey, you can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. Nathan made his choices, and those choices led to consequences. You didn't send him to prison, his own actions did." "I know that intellectually," Victoria said. "But emotionally it's harder." "It will get easier with time," Mrs. Patterson assured her. "Right now you need to focus on building your new life. You have a beautiful home, a successful career, and a bright future ahead of you." After Mrs. Patterson left, Victoria sat on her couch and thought about the conversation. She realized that her neighbor was right. She was a good person, and good people didn't celebrate others' misery, even when those people had caused them pain. Victoria pulled out her laptop and began typing an email to Stevens. Mr. Stevens, please give Nathan a message from me. Tell him that I forgive him for what he did to me. I don't forget and I won't allow him back into my life, but I forgive him. I hope he uses his time in prison to become a better person, and I hope he finds peace when he's released. Victoria. After sending the email, Victoria felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had been carrying anger and resentment for weeks, and while those feelings had been necessary to motivate her actions, they were becoming a burden. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting what Nathan had done or allowing him to hurt her again. It meant releasing the negative emotions that were holding her back from fully embracing her new life. 2 days later, Victoria received a response from Stevens. Nathan had asked him to thank Victoria for her message and to tell her that he was proud of how strong she had become. He was using his time in prison to attend therapy and addiction counseling, trying to understand how he had become the kind of person who could hurt someone he loved. Victoria felt a sense of closure reading Nathan's message. She hoped he would indeed become a better person, not for her sake, but for the sake of any future relationships he might have. That weekend, Victoria decided to throw a housewarming party. She invited Rachel and Mike, who were still in town, along with several colleagues from work and Mrs. Patterson. She wanted to celebrate her new life with people who cared about her. As Victoria prepared for the party, she looked around at her transformed home. The dark, oppressive atmosphere Nathan had preferred was gone, replaced with light, color, and warmth. The house felt alive again, filled with possibility instead of tension. Victoria's guests arrived bearing gifts and good wishes. Rachel brought champagne, Mike brought flowers, and her colleagues brought stories and laughter. Mrs. Patterson brought homemade cookies and the wisdom that came from decades of life experience. To new beginnings, Victoria said, raising her glass as her friends gathered in the living room where Nathan had once kicked her while she was down. To Victoria, Rachel added, the strongest woman we know. To justice, Mike said with a grin. To forgiveness, Mrs. Patterson added quietly, catching Victoria's eye. As Victoria looked around at the faces of people who truly cared about her, she realized that Nathan's cruelty had ultimately led to something beautiful. She had discovered her own strength, found genuine friends, and learned that she was capable of much more than she had ever imagined. Nathan had tried to break her, but instead he had helped her become the person she was always meant to be. And for that, despite everything he had put her through, Victoria was almost grateful. The war was over, and Victoria had won more than just money and property. She had won herself. 6 months after Nathan's sentencing, Victoria's life had transformed completely. She was excelling in her new position, had been featured in a business magazine as one of the city's rising executives, and had even been invited to speak at industry conferences. But perhaps more importantly, Victoria had discovered who she was when she wasn't trying to please someone else or walk on eggshells to avoid conflict. She was funny, confident, decisive, and kind. She had opinions and dreams and ambitions that had nothing to do with being someone's wife. Victoria was reviewing proposals in her corner office when her assistant buzzed her. Mrs. Blackwood, there's a James Chin here to see you. He says it's about a family matter. Victoria frowned. She didn't know anyone named James Chin, and she couldn't imagine what family matter would bring a stranger to her office. Send him in, she said. The man who entered her office was tall and well-dressed, with an apologetic expression on his face. Victoria recognized something familiar about his features but couldn't place where she might have seen him before. Mrs. Blackwood, thank you for seeing me, he said. I'm James Chin. I'm Sophia's older brother. Victoria felt her stomach clench. Sophia, Nathan's former mistress, the woman who had worn Victoria's clothes and filmed her humiliation. What do you want? Victoria asked, her voice cold. James Chin held up his hands peacefully. I know this is awkward and I know you have every reason to hate my sister. But I came here to apologize on behalf of my family. Victoria studied the man's face. Unlike Sophia, he seemed genuinely sincere and deeply uncomfortable. I don't understand, Victoria said. James sat down in the chair across from Victoria's desk. My sister told our parents that she was dating a successful businessman who was going through a divorce. She said you were the bad guy, that you were trying to take everything from this poor man who just wanted to be happy. Victoria felt a familiar flash of anger. And you believed her? At first, yes, James admitted. Sophia has always been good at manipulating the truth. But after your husband was arrested, I started asking questions. I did some research, talked to some people, and I learned what really happened. What did you learn? Victoria asked. I learned that my sister helped a married man assault and humiliate his wife. I learned that she participated in financial fraud and theft. I learned that she's a criminal who targeted your husband because she thought he had money. Victoria was surprised by James's bluntness. Why are you telling me this? Because someone needs to apologize to you, James said. My sister won't do it, she's too proud and too selfish. My parents still believe her lies. But I know the truth and I'm ashamed of what she did. Victoria felt some of her anger soften. It meant something that at least one member of Sophia's family recognized the truth. Where is Sophia now? Victoria asked. She disappeared after your husband was arrested, James said. She took the money she stole from him and left town. We haven't heard from her since. Victoria wasn't surprised. Sophia had shown her true character when she abandoned Nathan the moment he couldn't pay her bills anymore. I also came here to give you this, James continued, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. Sophia left some things at our parents' house before she disappeared. I thought you might want this back. Victoria opened the envelope to find her grandmother's pearl necklace, the one that had gone missing months ago, the one Nathan had claimed he didn't know anything about. Victoria held the necklace in her hands, feeling tears spring to her eyes. It had been her grandmother's most precious possession, passed down through 3 generations of women in Victoria's family. Thank you, Victoria said, her voice thick with emotion. This means more to me than you could possibly know. I figured it might be important, James said. I'm just sorry my sister took it in the first place. After James Chin left, Victoria sat in her office holding her grandmother's necklace and thinking about how much her life had changed. 6 months ago, she had been a woman who apologized for existing, who accepted cruelty as love, who believed she deserved whatever scraps of affection she could get. Now she was a woman who commanded respect, who had built a successful career, who surrounded herself with people who valued and appreciated her. Victoria's phone rang, interrupting her thoughts. It was Rachel, calling from California. Hey stranger, Rachel said. How's the new life treating you? Really well, Victoria said and meant it. I just had the strangest visit from Sophia's brother. Victoria told Rachel about James Chen's apology and the return of her grandmother's necklace. Wow, Rachel said. That must have been surreal. It was, Victoria agreed. But also kind of healing in a way. It was nice to hear someone from Sophia's family acknowledge what really happened. How are you feeling about everything these days? Rachel asked. Any regrets? Victoria considered the question seriously. No regrets, she said finally. I'm grateful for everything that happened, as strange as that sounds. If Nathan hadn't shown me his true character, I might have spent the rest of my life accepting mediocrity and calling it love. You're amazing, Rachel said. I'm so proud of how you've rebuilt your life. That evening, Victoria attended a charity fundraiser for domestic violence survivors. She had started volunteering with the organization as a way to help other women who had experienced what she had gone through. Victoria was mingling with other donors when she was approached by a tall, handsome man with kind eyes and an easy smile. Excuse me, he said. Are you Victoria Blackwood? I'm Dr. Samuel Torres. I heard your speech at the business conference last month, and I was really impressed. Victoria smiled. Thank you. That's very kind of you to say. I was wondering if you might be interested in joining the board of our medical foundation, Samuel continued. We're looking for someone with your business expertise to help us expand our programs. Victoria found herself genuinely interested in the conversation. Samuel was intelligent, passionate about his work, and clearly respected Victoria's professional accomplishments. He wasn't trying to impress her or diminish her, he was simply treating her as an equal. I'd love to hear more about it, Victoria said. As they talked, Victoria realized that this was what healthy interaction felt like. Mutual respect, genuine interest, shared values. It was so different from the dynamic she had had with Nathan, where every conversation had been a potential minefield. Would you like to have dinner sometime to discuss the foundation? Samuel asked. I know a great restaurant downtown. Victoria hesitated for just a moment. She hadn't been on a date since her divorce, hadn't even considered the possibility of romantic involvement with anyone. But looking at Samuel's open, honest face, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years, genuine attraction mixed with trust. I'd like that, Victoria said. As Victoria drove home that night, she thought about how far she had come. A year ago, she had been a woman who believed she deserved to be treated poorly, who accepted emotional abuse as normal, who thought she wasn't worthy of love or respect. Now she was a woman who knew her own value, who had rebuilt her life on her own terms, who was ready to open her heart to someone who would treat her with the kindness and respect she deserved. Victoria pulled into her driveway and looked up at her house, earned through her own strength and determination. The lights were on timers, welcoming her home to a space that was entirely her own. She walked through her front door and was greeted by the silence of a peaceful home. No tension, no walking on eggshells, no fear of saying or doing the wrong thing. Just peace, contentment, and the infinite possibility of a future built on her own choices. Victoria put her grandmother's necklace around her neck and looked at herself in the hallway mirror. The woman looking back at her was strong, confident, and beautiful. She was someone who had faced the worst kind of betrayal and emerged stronger for it. Nathan had tried to destroy her, but instead he had given her the greatest gift of all, the knowledge of her own worth. He had shown her what she would not accept, what she would not tolerate, what she deserved better than. And now, standing in her own home, wearing her grandmother's pearls, with a promising future stretching out before her, Victoria finally understood the truth. The war was over and she had won everything that mattered. She had won herself back, and that was worth more than any amount of money or property. Victoria smiled at her reflection and felt something she hadn't experienced in years: pure, uncomplicated happiness. She was free, she was strong, and she was ready for whatever came next. The revenge was complete, but more importantly, the healing had begun.